Deep in the dense forest stands a house where no one goes, and even if they do, they never return. But in that very house remains a child who has been starving for a long time. Every night he sits awake in an unknown terror. His task is to bring raw meat every day. But why is this child living in such an abandoned house where no one dares to go? With the answers to all these questions, let's begin the explanation of the movie Antlers. In a remote region of Oregon, Aiden arrives at a secret setup inside the forest with his father, Frank. Life has not been easy for them. Their mother died a long time ago, so Frank does dangerous illegal work to support his two children. In this region, mining work had started at Cinnabar Mouth a long time ago. But for some reason, since it was shut down, Frank and his partner are running an illegal operation inside the mine. However, news has recently spread that the government plans to restart the mining operation. So today, the two of them plan to vanish with everything they can carry. As Frank prepares to enter the mine, he hears a strange sound. Not thinking much of it, he continues deeper into the mine and meets his partner. While packing up their supplies to leave, he hears the sound again. Just like the supernatural scream of an unknown ancient creature. The sound slowly starts getting closer. When the two checked the area using flares, they realized within a very short time that staying there no longer felt safe. Just then, an invisible force attacked them from within the darkness. Amid the gunfire, their screams echoed through the mine. Meanwhile, seeing that his father had not come for a long time, Aiden got out of the car. While searching for him, he got lost in the darkness of the mine. 3 weeks later, we see Julia. Julia is a primary school teacher. Today is Julia's first day teaching at the school, so Principal Booth was observing her lesson. In the class, Julia was teaching about the Native Americans of Oregon and their culture. Frank's eldest son, Lucas, studies in this class. Since he is completely different from the others, he gets bullied in class. He has no friends. Lucas seems completely disconnected from what kids his age normally do. He keeps to himself, constantly lost in his own thoughts. On the way home, Lucas finds a dying animal, kills it, and stuffs it into a plastic bag. Afterwards, coming home, he tries to hear something by putting his ear against a closed door. Multiple locks are attached to this door. But the question is, why? Now let me tell you a bit about Julia. She lives in her brother Paul's house. Paul is the sheriff of this area by profession. Both Julia and Paul have been victims of their father's abuse since childhood. So in childhood, Julia had run away, leaving Paul at home. Even after all these years, Julia still carries that guilt. Over time, alcohol and her unstable lifestyle slowly turned into an addiction. But despite everything, Paul still wants to support Julia. On the other hand, we see Lucas. In the darkness of the night, he sits alone in the room. Across the whole house, there is only one single light placed on his table. Just then, Lucas hears someone calling him from the other side of the door. But even after hearing everything, he remains silent. The next day in class, Julia had asked the students to bring a story written according to their own minds. In that context, she tells Lucas to tell his story. Lucas had indeed not brought anything written, but he started telling a story by looking at the drawings he makes every day. Once upon a time, 3 bears lived in a dark cave in the forest. Big, Little, and Baby Bear. The big bear took care of the little ones. But with time, that big bear became ill and unable to work. One day, Little Bear suddenly returned home and saw that Baby and Big Bear had changed. And as time goes by, due to the lack of meat, Big Bear's body continues to get worse. But even after all this, they do not leave each other. As the story ended, Julia kept staring at him suspiciously, as if her suspicion was growing stronger. When school was over, Lucas was a victim of bullying again today. He was taken to the medical room. His physical condition and the scars on his back surprised them, especially Julia, so she called Lucas's house, but no one picks up. However, we see a strange eye from inside the closed room looking at the phone. That day, seeing Lucas walking home alone after school, Julia followed him. Lucas is standing in front of an ice cream parlor, watching intently. It's clear this is how he suppresses his desires. Just then, Julia came from behind and took him into the parlor to eat ice cream. Amidst the conversation, Julia tries to find out the real matter. Julia learns that Lucas's mother died, just like her own mother. Lucas's brother Aiden used to study at this school before, but after a certain point, he discontinued. However, before knowing the reason, Lucas leaves. On his way back today, finding a dead animal, he stuffed it into a plastic bag. On the other hand, before reaching Lucas's house, Julia goes to his house to look into the matter. At the very edge of the forest stood what looked like a completely abandoned house. No one seeing it would say that people live here. Going to knock, she saw that the door was open. So, upon entering cautiously, hearing some strange noises, Julia does not have the courage to investigate. Therefore, she returns home. At night, while looking at Lucas's torn drawings, her worry increases. Her suspicion is that Lucas is surely a victim of his father's abuse. On the other hand, we see Lucas. He cut up the carcass he found that morning and entered inside through the upper door with the raw meat. He places the plate a few feet away and waits silently. And then, a grotesque demonic creature emerges from the darkness. And this creature is none other than Lucas's father, Frank. After Frank disappeared back into the darkness with the meat, Aiden slowly stepped forward. His condition is getting worse, as if he's suffering from some unknown disease. His body is becoming dark and frail. Although Lucas brought raw meat for Frank, he brought normal food for his brother. But the question is, how did they end up like this? Meanwhile, to solve the mystery, Julia asks Paul about Frank Weaver. Frank. Local police, especially Paul, are very familiar with this name. He's been involved in illegal activities many times before. But seeing the condition of the house and the two children with him, the police have let him go with a warning every time. Childcare services thought Frank would be able to look after his sons. So a problem did not really arise. But why is Julia asking these things? Then Julia explains the whole matter. Along with this, she also says that she went to his house but found no one, as if no one lives in his house. So she requests Paul to go to Frank's house and check. In the middle of the night, Lucas is busy with his drawings. He has lost count of how many nights he has stayed awake like this. Every night, the screams of Frank and Aiden echo through the house. He had fed Aiden just a little while ago. Despite that, due to hunger, he is pushing the door. But what kind of hunger is this that is not satisfied in any way? Ignoring the sound, Lucas sits quietly, putting on headphones and hugging the doll. As soon as it is morning, he comes to the forest to set a trap. Just then, hearing some sound in the distance, he hides and watches former Sheriff Stokes. He is standing with a look of surprise in front of a distorted human body under a large tree. Today at school, Julia finds some strange drawings, animal traps, and spirit-related books from Lucas's desk. This made Julia even more suspicious. So, when she showed these to the principal, he was also quite surprised. Therefore, the principal himself informed her that he would go to his house and talk to Frank, reassuring her. In the afternoon, while coming out of the mall, Julia sees Stokes discussing the body found in the forest with Paul. After he left, Julia asked Paul about this matter. He says a brutally mutilated body has been found in the forest. The remains have already been sent for an autopsy. In other words, this body belongs to Frank's partner. At night, when Lucas meets Aiden, he notices that his condition has become much worse than before. Like other days, when he gave him normal food, he vomits it up, and black blood starts coming out of his body. But Lucas believes his brother is affected by a difficult disease, and he will surely get better after some time. By then, seeing the horrific body of the man in the post-mortem report, everyone is surprised, because no wild animal tears apart its prey like this. And even more surprising than this, the tooth marks found on his body belong to a human. This discovery makes the situation even more disturbing. The next morning, the principal goes to Lucas's house as promised to Julia to meet Frank. But naturally, not seeing anyone in his house, he entered inside. However, he does not realize that someone is keeping an eye on him from the upper window. Booth, smelling the condition of the room and the rotten odor, realizes that something has happened here. Surrounded by blood and a horrific rotten stench, Booth is stunned to see the sick Aiden. He does not understand exactly what has happened to him. And just then, Frank comes from behind and ends him ruthlessly. On the other hand, at school, as Lucas makes an antlered goat head and offers his blood to it, Frank screams in pain. And suddenly, the sound of cracking bones fills the room. A horrifying creature bursts out of his body. Meanwhile, the police have been able to guess that Frank and his colleague were surely running some illegal work in the mining meth lab. Therefore, when they went to the scene to collect evidence, they found a broken horn. However, they could not give much time to this task, because suddenly, a missing person report came in. After finishing school, while Lucas was returning home, the boy who bullies him blocked his path in the forest. Just then, Lucas notices a sound coming from behind the large tree in the forest. It didn't take much time. Within a moment, a massive creature picks up the boy. As Lucas ran home in fear, he saw Principal Madam's car still parked. Nothing remained for him to understand that a huge incident had taken place. He came upstairs hurriedly and his blood runs cold seeing a terrifying scene. The whole house is bloody, and the trail of that blood has reached towards the broken window. From there, keeping his composure, Lucas hid Booth's car. He sat quietly after cleaning all the blood stuck to the floor of the room. Meanwhile, a missing report for Booth has been filed at the station. In a town like this, people rarely go missing, so it will take some time to deploy a search team. However, Paul learned from Julia that Booth was supposed to go to Frank's house today. Perhaps something happened there. Paul could not dismiss the words. So at night, he goes to Frank's house with a team member. Although he could guess something unusual from the condition of his house, he cannot enter inside as there is no search warrant. And Lucas remains silent even after hearing their voices. So Paul decided he would come again tomorrow with a search warrant. However, as soon as it was morning, the pressure increased further, because the family members of the school child have appeared with his missing report. The matter is becoming even more difficult than they thought. Paul knows it will take time to investigate the whole matter under the system, but Julia does not want to accept it, because her firm belief is that Lucas or Frank is somehow involved in this incident. So Julia goes to Lucas's house alone, and exactly what she suspected happened. When the police reached the scene, they recovered the principal's horrific body. However, here all the guesses of the police turn, and the incident takes a new turn, because lying there was Frank's body. Not only that, it looks as if someone has burnt and simultaneously burst out from inside his body, something Paul had never seen in all his years as a sheriff. However, they do not find Aiden. He has gone into hiding somehow. After this, Lucas is admitted to the hospital and kept under high care, because this incident of the family over a long time has ended him mentally and physically. Initially, the doctor suspects that Lucas has perhaps been tortured by Frank in some way. This incident reminds Julia of her past. She too was once a victim of her father. So, in a way, after an argument with Paul, she makes a decision to keep Lucas under her own responsibility and raise him like a child. However, now besides all this, the question that is rising is what happened with Frank. So here we learn in Lucas's flashback that after something happened with Frank at the meth lab that day, his body was slowly rotting from the inside like a slow burn poison. But Frank did not know the reason for this condition. So, locking the door, he told his two children that he was very sick. He does not want them to get this disease. So he warns Lucas to keep the lock from outside the door. No matter what he says, they should not let Frank come out. In other words, although we thought Frank was guilty from the beginning, he was the victim of this incident. But as time goes by after this, his condition becomes even worse. And eventually, Aiden is affected in the same way just like Frank. And Frank and Aiden started staying together behind the closed door. But even after all this, the question remains, who was that creature we saw inside the mine? To find this answer, Paul and Julia meet Stokes. Based on the horn found from the mine, the condition of Lucas's house, and his drawings, after long research, he informs. Behind everything, such a mystery is involved that perhaps no one would believe it if they heard it. But if one digs into the history of folklore Native Americans, mention of this evil force or creature is found. Its name is Wendigo, Now, I hope those who have seen the movie Pet Sematary know very well about the Wendigo. The Wendigo is a curse born from human greed and the primitive instinct of eating human flesh. Legend says that when a person eats human flesh to survive in the forest during extreme cold or starvation, they fall under the grasp of this evil spirit. Gradually, they turn into a terrifying monster. Deep in the forest, they trap their prey by mimicking the voice of people very close or familiar to them. The most terrifying thing among them is their hunger, a hunger that can never be satisfied. The more they eat, the more the greed increases, due to which the hunger of Frank and Aidan was never satisfied. According to folklore, the Wendigo is weakest while eating, and only then is it possible to kill them by striking the heart. Still, they try as much as possible to find a new host to revive themselves. Due to mining, after human footsteps on the Wendigo's cursed land, it has awakened. Now where is the end of it, no one knows. So now, although Julia believes Stokes' words, Paul does not believe them in the slightest. Along with this, on the way back home, news came that the missing student's body has been found, and his condition is also like Frank's partner. So Paul decides to inform the mayor about the matter. But Julia's multiple questions are making the mystery more complex. On top of that, Aidan is still missing. After being discharged from the hospital, Julia kept her word and returns home with Lucas. It will be late for Paul to return after talking with the mayor, so he deployed his colleague to keep an eye on Lucas and the others. Julia was busy giving Lucas mental support then. After a short conversation, she finally told the truth that Frank is no more. But strangely, Lucas is not ready to accept this word. He said the one who died was my old sick father. Now I have a new father with Aidan. Now it has come back for Lucas. As Julia tried to understand what Lucas meant, Aidan's horrific screams suddenly echoed from the forest. He is coming to take him. Seeing the worsening situation, Mike informs Paul and moves towards the shed. Paul drives the car with the siren blaring towards the house. He is continuing to try to call to inform Julia. But the situation here does not look good at all. The air suddenly feels unnaturally still. The air reeks of something rotten. As Mike entered the shed silently, he saw something moving inside a small wooden box. As he shone the flashlight there, he saw Aidan peeking from under the cloth. However, his condition is much worse than before. Just then, suddenly from behind, the Wendigo thrusts its sharp horns into Mike's chest and ends him ruthlessly. Hearing that demonic sound over the audio, Paul drove the car at the speed of the wind. Julia, seeing the worsening situation, hugged Lucas and sat in a corner of the room watching the scene outside. By then, Paul arrived and seeing Mike's terrifying condition, not knowing what to do, went to save Aidan. Just then, with one jerk, the Wendigo throws Paul away. Seeing its demonic form, as Paul somehow managed to steady himself to strike, the Wendigo brutally strikes Paul again with its horns. In an attempt to save himself, even though Paul thrusts a sharp iron rod into its body that was near his hand, it has no effect, and eventually Paul loses consciousness. On the other hand, getting the opportunity, who knows when Lucas left Julia and fled. By then, Julia has managed to rescue Paul and bring him to consciousness. Calling the medic, she took Paul's gun in hand and said, "I am going to the mine to save Lucas and Aidan. Wait, I will surely return. I promise I will not flee in fear like before." Julia took the car to the mine, reaching there where everything originated. As Julia enters further inside, the sound of the Wendigo becomes intense, as if that evil creature is breathing right on her neck. When Julia reached the final stage of the mine, she saw Lucas hiding with Aidan. The two of them looked frozen in fear after seeing something in the darkness. Just as Julia turned the flashlight, she sees the Wendigo eating its prey. Terrifying is its form, like a grotesque inhuman monster risen from hell. As its glowing gaze fell on Julia, a chill runs down her spine, because the torn skin of Frank's face was hanging from the Wendigo's body. As it prepared to kill Julia, Julia started firing at it repeatedly, but nothing happens to it. At one point, as the bullets finished, the Wendigo grabbed her from behind and threw her away. To save her life, Julia tried to stop it with a flare lying in front. Seeing that it has been subdued because of the fire, Julia did not delay any longer. She remembers Stokes' words, "When the Wendigo eats its prey, only then strike its heart." So Julia picked up the iron rod lying nearby and thrusts it straight into its chest. Once, twice, as a result of repeated strikes, although the Wendigo fell injured, it moved forward to kill Julia. And just then, as Lucas thrusts a rod through its back, the Wendigo's massive body collapsed to the ground. After this, Julia wasted no more time. Again and again, she struck at its chest until she finally ripped it open and pulled out the heart glowing like lava inside. Even though she somehow pulled it out, Julia's hand burned as if acid had touched it. But along with this, a strange event occurs. As Julia went to destroy the Wendigo's heart in the fire, Aiden screamed out, because just like Frank, he too had become a victim of the Wendigo. And the Wendigo always looks for a new host to survive. In other words, if the Wendigo's heart is destroyed now, Aiden will also be finished, which Lucas will not let happen in any way. Finally, Lucas stopped Julia. But even if one wants, it is not possible to save Aiden now. Lucas's brother had ended that very day when Frank became the Wendigo's victim in the mine. So, there was no point holding on to false hope anymore. Aiden is no longer Lucas' brother, only a monster wearing his face. Finally, as Lucas accepted this harsh reality and stood aside covering his eyes, Julia hugged Aiden for the last time. Asking for forgiveness, she finally put Aiden to rest. And with this incident, the terror of a horrific night ends. After this, we are shown the incident a few days later. For the time being, Julia will keep Lucas with her. But Paul believes that some part of the Wendigo is perhaps within him too. Julia, of course, is not ready to think so much. She still hopes for a better life. But just before the movie ends, we get one final terrifying twist, and we see Paul, while coughing, black blood coming out of his mouth, just like what happened to Frank and Aiden. And with that terrifying final twist, Antlers comes to an end. If you enjoyed this terrifying recap, make sure to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more dark horror stories.